David. Please. Please. You have to get me out of here.
Leave this book alone.
No. You don't understand. There was something in the woods. And I think it's in here with us now.
I'm just going to start this review out by being completely honest with you guys. I've said multiple times that Evil Dead is one of my favorite films, and I went into this thing going, you know what? I'm going to judge it completely as its own thing. And I got like 5 minutes into this thing before I went, that ain't happening. So I'm going to try and not use the phrase in the original Evil Dead as much, but it's going to happen, and I apologize in advance for that. But joining me to try and keep me in check is Matt.
Hi.
Mike.
Hello.
And Jackson, who has not seen the film.
Hi.
That's how you pronounce your last name, right? Jackson, who has not seen the film?
Yeah, that's Tyler.
Okay. British pronunciations are weird, what can I say? Alright. But yeah, we have, the remaining 3 of us have all seen the new Evil Dead film. Evil Dead, for anybody who doesn't know, is a cult classic of a horror film. It spawned a sequel, which turned into a horror comedy, and it also went into Army of Darkness, which was kind of an action comedy. But this is I don't even know if I'd say reboot, because I don't even think they really have more planned for this, but it was definitely a remake.
Aaron?
Yes.
Fact-checking, they've already said that if this movie is successful, they have an Evil Dead 2 script in production.
That is true for all horror films, but yeah, it's... I will be very intrigued by that, but let's just start off.
Will Diablo Cody write it?
Yeah, let's go ahead. Everybody thinks that Diablo Cody wrote this. She actually did the punch-up job, from what I understand. She didn't actually write it. But this is a film about a couple of kids. They go into the woods. In the original Evil Dead, they just went in there to party. In this one, they're going up there because one of the character's sisters is trying to kick her drug habit. I'm not quite sure what she was on because it looked like she was dumping out powdered sugar, powdered brown sugar, because I thought it was Coke at first, but it wasn't. But whatever. But yeah, she's trying to kick her drug habit, so they're taking her to an isolated spot, to a cabin in the woods that they used to know when they were kids. And they happen to find a diary made in human flesh with big red letters that say, "Do not read at any point," all over it. And like dumb white people in horror films, they read it. So, demons come around and start possessing people. And that is the film that we have here. I'm just going to start off by saying that that so many people were going into this criticizing it, saying that, oh, it's not a comedy, it's not funny like the original one was. The original one was not funny. It's the second one that's the comedy. The original one, it's got, Sam Raimi, who directed it, was, known for doing a little bit of slapstick, but it is definitely the least slapsticky of all of his horror films that he's done. It was far more serious. It was meant to be just a straight horror film. So I feel like, I went into this movie thinking, well, I'm not expecting any comedy in this. But when I saw it, I have to say I kind of agree with him a little bit. Not because there isn't any humor in here, but because this thing is incredibly serious. Like, I've always said that in any good horror film, you need a little bit of jokes, have a little bit of levity thrown in every now and again, just to kind of ease the tension, just kind of like, refresh your palate. In this, it is just straight up drama. I mean, this movie starts off with the main characters going in there and saying, when Mom died, and she was insane, and I now have this drug problem. And I was like, Jesus Christ, someone find this book quick, because this is depressing me. I don't know, did anybody else feel that way?
I wanted to state that this drug premise, I think, is really brilliant for the remake, in that it gives these characters a reason to stay in the cabin when any sane human being would run away.
I will admit that in the beginning, I was kind of like, man, I don't really need this in here. But then I knew that they were going to use that as the way to keep them in the cabin. But they do it well. Like,
Yes.
they did it better than I thought they were going to.
And to your tonal problem, I think the thing that I appreciated most about this movie is that after something like Cabin in the Woods that says these trope-laden horror films don't work anymore, you have to be more, Evil Dead is a firm statement that if you do it right, you don't have to be more than a simple premise, and you can make a decent film.
This doesn't really go beyond, like, the tropes that we've seen before, but, I mean, honestly, there aren't a lot of the tropes that we've seen in here. I mean, other than the kids go up into the cabin and then stuff starts killing them off, this doesn't really feel like most other horror films. This is, it's more mature, I'll say that.
I think it starts with a more serious premise. I think that the places it goes end up back in firm Evil Dead territory.
Well, and also, like, the characters themselves throughout the whole film still remain a lot more mature. Like I said, there's no levity at all in this film. I mean, it is, the main character is very sullen, very sulky the whole time. The weird hippie-looking guy, I'm not sure what they were going for with his look, but, he was panicking the whole time. The nurse, who I wanted to see more of her in this film. I really liked her character, but, I mean, she, once again, is very, no, we are staying here, we're not going. And, in a typical trope-laden horror film, there would be, a diss. There would be the douchebag Freddy guy. There would be a little bit, everybody's intelligence levels would have been taken down a notch. These people are more mature, more, intelligent than your average horror film people.
Yeah, and I think that's... The thing that I was thinking as I was watching the movie was it reminded me of the things I liked about the Silent Hill movie. And what I ended up falling on when I was thinking about it more is that it feels very European in tone. This is not an American 80s slasher flick. This is much more international sensibilities applied to that kind of film. And I think that's where a lot of the gravity comes from.
You're right. When you look at films like High Tension or a lot of these other European horror films, they do take a much more mature tone with it. Mike, you've been quiet over there. Do you agree with any of the stuff we're saying, or?
Yeah, pretty much. I kind of liked, the more mature aspect that they weren't, falling back to those same horror tropes, and it was just, I don't know. I kind of appreciated that there wasn't like that, bits of comedy, to release the tension. I like that they kind of just kept it up and shit just kept getting crazier. And I mean, just the way that they start the film, like just, it's boom, like this is how, this is, completely setting the tone for the rest of the film. And it was graphic, but I think it was a great way to start it off.
It's very odd that you mentioned the graphic part because, normally, like, I hate any of those, like, Saw or Hostel films. Because to me, it's just showing gross, like, gross gore horror just to have that. Just because, like, that's all you need. And I typically have to look away from those things because it's just being gross. Not because I'm scared, but because I just don't want to see that. In this film, they do have a lot of, like, pretty gross stuff in there. But I never had to look away. And I think it's because they set up a good little moment. They set up good lead-ins to it whenever they had it.
I also feel like the movie doesn't trade in human suffering like Hostel does, where it lingers on like the impact of that stuff. It's doing it almost entirely as a visual motif, which in that way it's very similar to the original Evil Dead movies, which were incredibly gross, but done more for the sake of the gag than for trying to make you wince or cringe.
Yeah, exactly. The gross stuff is not supposed to be the focus. It is supposed to be the outcome of what the actual threat is. It's not torture porn like those films are, where it's just, hey, this guy's toenails are being ripped out, ain't that gross? No, this is like actual, like, when you see somebody with a piece of their body missing, it's not so that you go, oh wow, that is really creepy to look at. It's you going, wow, this demon thing is really messing them up. To put it in very simple terms. But we've been speaking fairly positive about it. There are a few things in it that I have problems with, though. And I'm prepared to go on the defensive here, because I know I will. I said I wasn't going to do this, but they did change a lot of stuff from the original Evil Dead, which is fine. Like I said, I want this to feel like its own thing, and I want to judge this completely as its own thing. But, they do stuff like, in the original Evil Dead, when you have that camera zooming across, and it's meant to kind of be whatever the threat is, you never see what it is. You never see what the person's looking at, what they're screaming at. And I like that because, in my mind, whatever your imagination is much more terrifying than what it actually is. And here, you actually see what they're looking at, and I didn't like that, in my opinion. To me, it took some of the impact out of it.
You talking like the scene in the woods where the camera's zooming around the trees, and then they cut to...
Yeah, when the camera's zooming around the trees and stuff, that's something that was always in the Evil Dead. That's what the evil is supposed to be, and you would see people running from it, looking at, screaming, but you would never see what it was because in your mind, whatever it is supposed to be far more frightening than anything they could actually show you. And here, you actually see kind of a ghostly thing there, and I don't want to give too much away, but yeah, you do see something there that she is looking at whenever this camera zooms into her. And I didn't really care for that. I think that takes out some of the impact myself.
Well, I think the first time that they do that, when she's walking around in the rain, and then that hits her,
Oh yeah, they didn't show it then. It was when the trees start grabbing her. Which, by the way, that's in the trailer. That's not a spoiler that they have that they pay homage to the infamous tree scene from the original.
I want to speak up, and I think that tree scene in a modern context is a terrible inclusion, and my least favorite
okay,
part of the
good,
movie.
okay, good. I'm glad because I was I'm afraid that's just me saying, well, it's not like in the original, and I didn't want to bring it up, but I'm glad that you said that. Yeah, I don't think that in a modern setting, showing it or at least showing as much of it as they did. Is necessary.
I want to be explicit. The way that the original Evil Dead movie plays that tree scene, let's be fair, a rape scene for laughs is problematic, but it's also a movie from the early 80s. In 2013, that scene's not played for laughs, I'll admit, and thank God for that. But that it's included in all feels exploitative in a way that I'm not comfortable with.
Yeah, I can totally agree with you, but also because since it's not played for laughs in this one, it's far more graphic.
Oh yeah,
which makes it even more disturbing than the original one.
When was the last time that you saw the original? Because I just rewatched it a few days ago, and
I see it every time I close my eyes.
I mean, because that original, tree scene is still extreme. In fact, I would say in some ways it's even more graphic because it actually. You get her reaction, the woman's reaction to the event while it's happening, whereas this one, it kind of happens and then it's over. I don't know, I feel like the original kind of lingers on it and was a lot more graphic than this one. Not to say that this one wasn't graphic, but it was. I just think that the original kind of took it a little step further, but again, maybe that's more towards the 80s campiness of it. I don't know.
I found that the weird reverse shot effects of that sequence in the original are a little hard to take seriously. Because they are incredibly obvious.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And I'll admit that's a your mileage may vary call for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, a couple other things I had a little bit of problems with. In the original, like I said, none of them really have that much of a personality other than just being tropes. In this one, they each definitely do have backstories. And they do have personalities, but I didn't really like the way that they were introduced. It was kind of like when they were introduced, they were getting it all out there at once. I felt like the way that they were introduced was kind of like what's your backstory? Well, this is my backstory.
It's definitely exposition stocked. Yeah.
Okay, good.
Because those characters are introduced, it's like, hey, my friend that is now a doctor, I have not seen you in 10 years since we were friends in childhood.
I'm so glad you said that. I was like, man, I thought I was going to be so on the defense on many of these, but no, okay, good. We're all on the same page so far. But yeah, and it also in a way hurts one of the characters, because I feel like 4 of them definitely had personalities. Another one was just like, oh, and she's here. Hi.
Okay. I don't know how to say this without spoilers. I thought that character was going to end up being the Ash Amrock
right,
in this
okay,
movie.
yeah.
Because she is so underwritten, and the thing that Evil Dead did was Ash was the character that basically just hung around until everyone else was dead, and he became the de facto
He definitely
hero.
was. He did, yeah, exactly. And I was fine with that in the original because, yeah, you have these people who they're just kind of tropes, and Ash was just kind of like the tropeless one. He was meant to kind of be like the stand-in guy who just kind of then all of a sudden just had to nut up at the last moment. But with her, because everybody else had a personality, and she just kind of disappears for a good portion of the film, I feel.
Yeah.
And, yeah, I feel like it would have been kind of a letdown to me to just suddenly go, wait a minute, now I have to cheer for the person who I forgot was in the movie for a second?
Well, I thought that's where they were going with that big fake-out scene in the middle of the film.
Yeah. They definitely,
And
yeah, exactly.
I'm glad that they played that the way they did.
Yeah, I definitely think that they made the right choice on that one. But yeah, that's pretty much what all my complaints have been, except that also, and this is the one where I'm positive I'm going to be differentiate from you guys. The movie reaches a point, and I love the point it reaches, and then it decides to go to one scene more, and I didn't really care for the one scene more.
Wait, are you talking about the last 10 minutes? With the rain and everything?
Maybe not the last. With the rain. Okay, yeah. All right, yeah.
That is my favorite part of the entire film.
I knew I was going to be of a different opinion on this one. I like it.
It is so impossible to talk about without spoiling it.
I don't really feel like it is. I'll just say that I like the very end of this film, but I feel like right before that, it's a much bigger lead up, and the very final line that's said in the movie, to me, it was of a different tone than the rest of the film, to me. It just kind of took me out there in that last moment.
I will say that final line is probably not the strongest. What happens right after that final line is amazing. But I feel like...
Oh, that's good! I'll say that's an awesome way for the film to end.
One of the best effects I've seen in a long, long time.
It absolutely is, yeah. It's, you know what, honestly, the more I think about it, the more I'm just kind of saying, like I said, I like that ending. I just feel like the scene right before that, which was kind of like the fake ending that all horror films do, was a little bit stronger to me, and yeah, I don't like that last line.
I think that ending is... I think that is the signpost of if they do a second one, is where they will be going. And if that's true, it is my most anticipated movie of whatever year that's coming out in. Because that version of that movie, I think, is the promise of the original Evil Dead and its sequels of amazing action horror nonsense.
I will agree with you on that, because there is one other thing that they do make a big change from the original to this one, is that, and I feel like I can say this and it's not really a spoiler, it's that, in the original one, it's basically, they open up hell. Basically, they turn the woods into a demon infestation in which just crazy shit can happen. In this one, they give more backstory to the Necronomicon, and they say that, well, it's all for this one demon. This one big, nasty demon guy. And honestly, I didn't really care for that, and I knew, I will flat out admit, yeah, that was just me going, this wasn't in the original. But the more the film goes on, the more it separates itself from the original film and kind of becomes its own thing. And after it got to that point, I was more willing to go, you know what? Yeah, one demon. I'm cool with that in this movie.
I feel like while the backstory tries to explicitly give you a one demon, I think that's one of those things that is easily turnable into something more extreme if they want to go in that direction. I would really love it if the new Evil Dead 2 does a similar recap / retcon of Evil Dead 1. And rewrites
cool.
How that movie went.
That's one of my favorite things from the original Evil Dead 2. I had a buddy who, for the longest time, kept saying, Ash is the biggest dumbass. He survives and goes back to the cabin for another night, not realizing that was a recap that they did.
Evil Dead 2 is one of my favorite movies of all time. So
it's so good. But yeah, in this film, I will say that, speaking about the end, I mentioned that final moment, but leading up to that, I really enjoyed it. In fact, there is a really touching moment right before that in any other horror film, they would have done one thing with it. In this one, they don't, and I'm so glad.
Oh,
I can't really give much more details, but I think you guys know what I mean.
that sequence is great and surprisingly
Yeah.
moving. Yeah, all
Yeah,
in all,
and in any other film, like, there were people in my audience, you could tell all of us were just going, dumbass, don't do that, but, yeah.
I'm impressed with where the movie went with most of its stuff. And as a remake, I think that it obviously doesn't try to cover the same ground in the same way. And I think that's why it really works, because it's obviously respectful of the original material without trying to supersede it. It's its own thing, and it's very different in a way that fans of the original probably will appreciate.
I felt like maybe like the first half of this film, they were trying a little too hard to
I'd
kind of
agree
go,
with that.
oh, this is this is this, don't you remember that? And like I said, I was kind of having problems with this movie for the first half. And then after that, you're right, it does just become its own thing so much that I'm like, you know what, I don't have to compare this anymore. Mike, you have anything else you want to add to it?
Yeah, considering after Cabin in the Woods last year, you didn't think there'd be easy to get another good horror film. I think Evil Dead managed to do that.
I felt so bad for this movie after Cabin in the Woods.
Yeah, but honestly, I think that they did a really great job. They paid enough homage, and left the little things in there for people who were fans of the original, but kind of did take their own course. And I think, kind of with Matt, I think it'd be really interesting to see where they go with an Evil Dead 2. I'm assuming this movie's going to make enough money. I guess, without really giving it away, did you stay after the credits?
I did.
I
did.
usually
Okay.
stay for the credits anyway.
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
I always stay throughout the credits, and this is the first time I ever did that at this particular theater, and apparently at this theater, I'm the only guy who does it. Because the moment that in credits start, everybody leaves and the staff comes in, and they just look at me like, what the fuck are you doing here? Like, they had never seen someone stay for credits before.
Yeah, I kind of got that look too. But what did you, without really giving much away, I don't know, what did you think of it? Like, for me, it was kind of neat, but also seemed completely unnecessary at the same time. I don't know.
Like most back-end stingers, and like they should be, it's not relevant to any sort of plot thing. It's the kind of thing that you can easily miss, and when you rent it at home and you get to the end because you forget to turn the DVD off because you're doing whatever with your friends, you see it, like, oh, that's cool. And I think that's where that kind of thing should live.
Yeah.
I'm kind of like in that area where with me it's one of those things like, dude, you were trying to make this your own movie. Why would you do that? But at the same time, like the geek inside me went, oh my god, it's that, and it did it.
I'm convinced that New Army of Darkness, if they ever get there, and Evil Dead 4 will be the same movie. Old Evil Dead 4.
I'm not gonna
and
lie.
New
At
Army
the end of
Darkness.
this movie, I'm not gonna lie. At the end of this movie, I did just want to see old ass Bruce Campbell jump in, shoot everyone's head off, and go, "Dumbass kids," and then walk off.
Though,
But
I'm really glad they didn't give him a cameo because I thought they were going
me too. Me too.
Yeah.
I'm glad that they. Yeah, exactly. Me too.
Considering
but all
Sam
right.
Raimi sticks him in every single movie he's ever made.
I'm cool with him doing that.
yeah,
so did
sure.
the Coen brothers. But yeah. So everybody, what are your ratings on this?
I'd give it 4 out of 5 stars.
I'm going to go with 4 out of 5 as well.
I'd go-
It ends stronger than it starts, for sure, and that's the best thing.
It definitely does. I would go low 4 out of 5 stars, but that's still like I can fully admit that might just be me, my inner harumph going, this wasn't like the original one. But I do fully think that by the second half of this film, I was completely over that, and I was totally judging its own thing. But I would have gladly given this probably a high 4 out of 5 stars if it wasn't for that one line at the end. But once again, I know that's just me, so low 4 out of 5 stars. I will go on and on explaining my reviews, won't I? Anywho, now if you'll excuse me, I have to take this episode and wrap in some barbed wire and bury it, because no one should ever have to listen to our ramblings.
It doesn't burn. It doesn't burn.
We're gonna get you, not another peep. Time to go to sleep.